What is the role of the black church in fostering the black family? And can our churches survive without the black family? These are just two questions we'll examine today on Folks. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Folks. I'm Rob Hinton, News and Public Affairs Director. Sonia Massingo is taking a break this week. Today, we'll be taking a look at a very serious matter, and that's the black family. To put it simply, many of our black leaders and social scientists say the black family, as we traditionally know it, is falling apart. Why is this happening? And what can be done to reverse what some are calling an already bad situation? Today, we'll be turning to the church, which has traditionally been a pillar of strength in the black community, for some answers. My guests are two distinguished ministers from the Baton Rouge area, the Reverend L.L. Haynes, Jr., pastor of Wesley United Methodist Church, and the Reverend Charles Smith, pastor of Shiloh Baptist Church. Welcome to Folks, both of you. Let's begin by taking a look at some numbers. The number of black families headed by women has soared more than 100% over the last 15 years, and it's believed that 43% of all black families are without a father in the home. And the number of black families living with both parents has dropped from 58% 15 years ago to 41% today, while single-parent situations have increased. As members of the clergy, do you find these statistics very alarming?
Dr. Smith, I'll react to that. No, I don't find them alarming. I think it simply relates to the statistical way in which the predominance of society views the black experience, and that comes up with numbers. I don't think you can really gauge the black experience with the numbers that come from the predominantly methodology of dealing with the black family. I'm assuming that the figures are correct, but the response of the church is to look at those figures more than just casually and really get in depth to see whether those figures are related to the significance of the despair and despondency of the black family. I think the black family is strong. I think it's strong as it's ever been. The statistical data, of course, relates to it, and there are some problems. I don't deny that. But I would like to take, sometime maybe during this conversation, a new method of looking at the black experience, and particularly the black family, not from the top down, which I'd like to say for some reason, because there are a lot of poor people at the top, not from the top down, but from the bottom up. And that is from a boy that I grew up in, a family, a black family, with its relationship with grandmother, grandfather, aunt, uncles, and nieces, and everybody else was a part of a totality. And it's a little broader conception than what may be what I call a family that's related only to father and mother.
Let me get Dr. Smith right. What about those statistics? Do you find them alarming at all?
Well, I find them somewhat disturbing. However, I don't think that they are reflective of the percentages of single-parent families that you would find active in the church, whereas the overall statistics are probably accurate. I don't have any way of questioning them. Certainly, I would think that within the ranks of those who are actively involved in the church, you would have a much smaller figure when it comes to single-parent families.
Traditionally, the black church has been viewed as a pillar of strength in the black community. I wonder, has this role changed? And if so, can you tell us how? Dr. Smith?
Well, I feel as if the church is still a pillar of strength within the black community for those who traditionally involve themselves in the religious life and in the offerings of the church. I think that the problem has come with the fact that there has been a falling away from the church by certain segments of the community that I trace back to some of the changes that took place in the 60s. And I believe that the church is recovering from that falling away. I've noticed a definite change in the latter part of the 70s and in the early 80s. But I believe that you will find a substantial difference between the moral climate of people who are involved in the church, and this is reflected in the family life from top to bottom. But I think that some of the problems that we have incurred are directly related to a falling away from the church that took place with the revolutionary times of the 60s.
Reverend Haynes, you're shaking your head in agreement.
Well, I would say that the strength of the black church there'll always be a black church, whether it be Methodist or Baptist, I don't know. But the situation in America that creates it makes it do three things that I think. One, it's the custodian of black culture. You can't talk about black culture without somewhere relating it to the church itself, beginning with black preaching, which is, I think it's at its best, is some of the finest expression of art form that America's ever produced. James Weldon Johnson, of course, already done that bit. But the great singers, the great artists, so that whatever you want to talk about the weakness of the church, it is still the place where if anybody really wants to know what black culture is all about, he goes there. Secondly, it creates the values of the black community. And that's obvious because more recently, in recent days, we had on November 4th an election. There's no doubt what happened, the sensitivity of the black experience to what was for many in the black church, a real value, a real human value may have determined more than anything that election. The scholars that I know of are related to it. We have not developed a cadre of black scholarship that almost a humanistic scholarship. Almost all of our scholars are in the black church. The third thing, of course, it interprets the risk, these risks that you're talking about, and it sustains, to me, the family, which I agree with Dr. Smith, focusing upon that family, the black church becomes a real important point where a single parent, and there are single parents, can relate to as a kind of strength, so the black preacher becomes more than just a priest and a priestly function or preacher function, but a father. And it's those three things, I think, will always make the black church strong. And I agree, we got hit with an avalanche, but more recently, take the gospel song movement that has come swinging back with young blacks who are, seem to me, getting back, Dr. Smith, digging at the roots of our experience and coming up with a new language by which they can articulate and endure the world.
What do you say our black leaders, our national black leaders, are telling us that the black family, as we know it traditionally, is facing a crisis, it's vanishing, has reached crisis proportion. A couple of years ago, I attended a summit in Nashville put on by the NAACP and the Urban League that addressed this issue. I'm wondering, is the problem as critical? It's been a lot of media attention focused on the black family in recent years. I'm wondering, has the problem, is it as critical as we are led to believe?
Well, certainly I think that the problem is critical. Whether it's as critical as we've been led to believe or not, I'm not in a position to say. However, I think that the church is addressing this problem in many ways that don't get publicized. I think that even in cases where we do have single family parents, that many of these young people are finding meaning and purpose for their lives within the church community, and you cannot just naturally assume because a child comes from a single family situation, or even if the child is illegitimate, that child is doomed to poverty and doomed to failure. I know of any number of instances where young people have found a place for themselves in the church. They have developed along lines comparable to children who come out of what we call, quote, normal, unquote, homes, and do very, very well in life. And I think that the church is addressing this problem in a very effective way by providing outlets and opportunities for these kids to assert themselves.
I want to talk a little bit about some of those outlets, but if you can tell us historically, traditionally, what has been the role between the black church and the black family?
Well, there's no question the black family and the black church is a traditional role. The black church in our situation comes first. In the American sociological scheme of things, coming out of slavery, there was the black church is the first family. And then the family structure then develops as a secondary thing. And for white America predominantly, they had the family and then the church, but we had the church. So that coming out of slavery, brothers and sisters found each other sometime at the altar where they'd been dispersed all over the country. And like a story that I like to tell about in New Orleans, where two kids sold in North Carolina, they met each other after the whole slavery period was over. And so the black church then was that cohesive element by which held the black people together. Then out of that became the learning of marriage and baptism. Long before the state of Louisiana recorded those baptisms, people come to me finding their Social Security, not so much from what they recorded in Louisiana, but what my baptismal certificates, and I guess Dr. Smith would say that. And thirdly, I think there's a new increasing awareness of our relationship of black churches, not that we're out on the island by ourselves, but we're interlocking and interrelating to each other, linking with each other to address this problem of the black family, so that Shiloh and Wesley and other places that in our city will find ourselves coming together with a solid approach to this. And this problem has made us develop that approach.
So where did the changes come as far as the role between the black family and the black church? When did the changes start happening? Do we really go back to the 60s and blame it all on what took place during the 60s, or did it start breaking down before then?
Well, I would certainly say that there was a falling away in the 60s. I would describe it from the point of view of the many ministers during the 60s abandoning the traditional role of the pastorate and becoming known more as civil rights leaders. Of course, no fault with that because much good was done. However, as the civil rights movement progressed and certain other organizations became popularized, particularly by the news media, I think that some young people thought that the church had outgrown its usefulness and that this was the new Christianity. However, with the demise of those organizations, you found a return on the part of many people to the church, because there were many needs that the church was fulfilling that could not be fulfilled per se by civil rights organizations and things of that sort. So I think that there was a period when you had a falling away by many of our young people, but I think that gradually our young people have returned.
The talents of our black preachers were taken over to social organizations who took over what the traditional role of the black church was. We fed people. I remember my father and Dr. Smith, your father, feeding people, taking care of their needs, their medical needs and whatnot. And then you came with this wealth of charity in the 1930s and the rose highly with the programs here in Baton Rouge. Now with the demise and the not funding those programs and they're back on level, the black mother, which is the black church, picks it all up again. We're feeding people again. We're clothing people. We're housing people. We're doing everything that we used to do. And that's bringing that black family. Every brother takes care of a brother. Every sister takes care of a sister. And I see that in many programs. Dr. Smith has an excellent one. Mine is very small. But we're back in business doing what the church did and does better than anybody else, holding black people together in difficult days and difficult times.
I know my grandparents and great-grandparents often told me how their life was built around, I mean, even their social life was built around activities at the church. Are we seeing more of that today?
Yes, I'd like to introduce the term the church as extended family. And I think that the church does serve that function more today than perhaps it was in the last decade. You know, many of the needs that the church supplies really address not only the religious aspect of people's lives, but the psychological, the sociological, and we have found a totality of our needs being supplied in the black church traditionally. And I think that the church really does, from a sociological point of view, serve as an extended family for many of our people.
I'd like to say that you've got the middle-class blacks who has come under great criticism in recent days, the middle-class black family, what the family with that heritage. They're coming back to the black church. They're coming, seeing their responsibility to the black brother. I would say that if the nation came to a point, and I hope it will not come to this, where we would not find our kids getting scholarships or getting money from government or whatever, we'd go to school anyway, because the church is getting geared up to meet that need. We've always sent kids. Many of us have our own colleges, Dillard and Xavier and Leland, which has been a great history in this state. We are determined to stay in business, and the black church is the key. And I think that key, which has always been a part of our experience, is getting back. Well, maybe these programs, which were short-ended anyway, 5 years, and they were over, and the old mother church, 120 years, 200 years after slavery, still going on, still putting out its talented young. They're not leaving it. They're coming back, finding, because that's where their roots are, even though they may work in other kinds of agencies across the land.
I hate breaking things down in terms of black and white, but black and white is a reality.
Yes, it is.
I'm wondering if the problems that we hear that are facing the black families, are they any different or any greater than the problems that are facing white families?
I would certainly say so, because the role of the black person in our society is unique, so it only follows that the problems that they would be confronted with would be unique. And this is where the black church has traditionally played such an important role. You know, it's no secret that we are at the bottom end of the economic spectrum. We're the last hired, we're the first fired. Educationally, we are behind. And the black church seeks to address these issues in many ways. For instance, to be specific, our church has a full-time caseworker that deals with problems of poverty, not just for black people, but certainly we see more black people than anybody else. We spend a lot of time dealing with the economic needs of our people in the community, people who can't pay their rent, who can't pay their utility bill, and what have you. But we haven't confined it to that. We have a federal credit union in our church that encourages systematic saving and that pays the nominal rate of interest on monies saved. But by the same token, we make loans through our church credit union at the unheard of rate today of 1.25% interest on the unpaid balance. We give scholarships annually in our church to express our concern about not only the financial aspect of receiving education, but it's a competitive thing to motivate young people to want to excel in the educational area. We provide a variety of motivational programs through our Board of Christian Education that will motivate young people to want to come around the church other than for worship experiences, but to associate and relate to one another. Hopefully, a lot of these young people will fall in love, court, and marry within the church. So we are trying in the church to address the unique problems of black people, and we do think that they are unique, and we don't think that there's any other agency in the community that's really equipped to address those problems as well as the black church is.
I would think in the black church, if you want to know how unique the black church is, it's what the black church does with Jesus. That's the key. The theological or the Christological framework of here, the cornerstone of the black church is that Jesus teaches every child that you're somebody. No matter what you hear in the world, no matter what the test is or whatever the scores. And that note is an underlying assumption that makes a man not just the ambulatory cases that need food and whatever, but that man who needs just that extra zest when he runs and confronts a racist society or problems of his own. He gets that internal direction that he is somebody in the sight of God. And if you want to really understand Jesus, you got to understand Jesus in the context, and I think it's where a great difference, as I've understood the white church, Dr. Smith, is to hear that tone of the center of is Jesus in the framework of what those who have loved Jesus, hospitals, schools, homes, doctors, lawyers, preachers, whatever the Christian contribution. In that center, black preachers and black church laymen have taken that affection of which I don't think we can treat casually in the black church, keeps alive, and that is the center of our worship is Jesus Christ.
What does the church think about single-parent families, and particularly what does the church think about children, teenagers with children who are...
In our church, we think that it's unfortunate, and we address it from the point of view of an unfortunate situation that needs to be forgiven, and that the problems that might grow out of such families might be addressed by the church through its program, so that those individuals who were born into an unfortunate situation might develop as normally as they possibly can. And
but we baptize, we marry. We don't get in our pulpits talking down these people. Yeah. They become a part or center of the core. I could care less when a child comes up with the mother and the child the same name. I don't make any issue over that.
But has the church always, the black church particularly, always been like that? Because yes. I know I've listened to my grandparents say we wouldn't allow that when I was a child. Didn't things like that.
I've never known when that became a serious issue. And I know we want it to be better, but the grace of God that makes the little old ladies who sit in white in the church, and they know all the problems of the preacher, the evil and the sins of the whole world. They invariably will bring, Reverend, you'll baptize our baby today, and you cannot refuse baptism or any of the graces of the sacraments which are essential to the well-being of the human soul.
Yeah, personally, I don't see the church's role as being punitive. I think it is a forgiving role and as a nurturing role. And if a mistake has been made, then it's up to the church to forgive and to nurture and to try to provide as normal an experience for the individual who has made the mistake and the child who is the victim of the mistake as possible.
When does the church begin fostering the values of a traditional black family? When do you begin that, with children or as they get older?
Well, I began in my church with the Sunday school, the church school, which I think is essential. In our walls we have Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, and all of the Sojourner Truth, what I call the black saints. I tell the kids, go up and look at the black saints. I've got a large number of people. We're deluged by Western Christendom, and I try to make a decided effort to have programs of the black music experience. We go from slavery to now and what our songs are all about. Try to keep that culture alive and beginning all the way through the adults and listening to the older people's story, which is probably as interesting as the young people.
We only have a few minutes left, but I'd like to know, how far can the church go in promoting the black family?
I think it can go quite a ways, first of all, in setting the tone for the understanding of family life. As Dr. Haynes stated a little while ago, he made mention of something that I refer to as identity. I think that the church must begin by establishing our identity as spiritual, and therefore establishing the family as a spiritual entity rather than a sociological entity. If we recognize whose we are, then we know who we are. And as individuals who recognize our true worth as spiritual rather than sociological, economic, or political, educational, I think that when we see ourselves as spiritual beings, then we see the role of the family as a spiritual role, and consequently, family life is something that is dedicated to the glory of God rather than for our own personal pleasure, just for the perpetuation of the species.
And nobody can pull you down. The church pulls you up. I don't know, the basis of the church existence is to pull people up. And that's why Jesse Jackson, Martin King, and all the rest of the men who have led black people have come out of the black church, the reverends, who we regard as great and significant contribution to American life.
Very briefly now, we've identified that there is a problem with the black family, but it is a problem that is solvable.
Yes, I think it's hopeful, because the strength of the black church is stronger than it was when I was a boy. It's going great. We have the institutions, the building, the structures, and also the great care and concern.
I agree, and I think that we have broader programs, better facilities, better trained clergy, better trained membership who are willing to share their time and their abilities. And I think that we are addressing the problem, and if we could get the publicity for the positive things that are being done, as opposed to the negative all the time, you would see that it's being addressed.
Okay, Reverend Smith, Reverend Haynes, thank you both for being with us on Folks. That's our program for this week. Thanks for watching. Folks will be away for several weeks while Winterfest 86 is underway, but Sonia will be back in late December with another interesting program of Folks. Be sure to check it out. We'll see you. Bye-bye.